back to my channel, and in today's video we are going to continue our exploration into the angle and foot complex. With this video we will wind up the discussion of basic anatomy and basic biomechanics of the angle and foot complex. And here we have Metatarsophalangeal joint, Tarsometatarsal joint and Interphalangeal joint. In upcoming sessions, we will be purely focusing on the much awaited function at the angle complex. To make this video interesting, I have added various pictures, few clinical conditions like a Morton's foot, Sesamoiditis, plantar plate tear, etc. To know about it and to know about the anatomy and biomechanics, stay tuned with the video, and if you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe to my channel. We are going to discuss about the tarsometatarsal joint. Need not worry thinking that we have 3 joints to cover. We'll do it in the most simplified manner and most easiest manner. Yes, let's focus on the tarsometatarsal joint. Let me ask you, how many tarsal bones are there? Any idea? We have 7 tarsal bones in 3 rows, which we have the posterior row, we have an intermediate row, we have an anterior or distal row. This posterior is also the proximal row. You know that? Yes. Which are the bones? Any guess? The posterior row includes your calcaneum and your talus. Your intermediate layer, you contains the navicular bone, right? And the distal layer, you contain, here you have the cuboid, here you have the medial cuneiform, here you have the middle cuneiform, and here you have the lateral cuneiform. Middle cuneiform or intermediate cuneiform bone. So now let us see what is tarsometatarsal joint. Metatarsals are these bones. So which row of the tarsal bones are actually in contact with the metatarsal? You can simply predict from this diagram that is the distal row. Yes, that is the distal row. So what is your tarsometatarsal joint? It's a joint between the distal row of your tarsal bones with your metatarsals. So simple. So that is a joint between your distal row of the tarsals, this row, with the metatarsals. So that is your tarsometatarsal joint. Is it clear? Yes. Now let us build our concept. It is formed by distal row of tarsal bones, and distal row contains the cuboid bone. You contains medial, intermediate and lateral cuneiform bones. So these are the 4 bones that makes up the joints. All right. And what about the metatarsals? You have the base of the metatarsals, right? So you can define this joint as a joint formed between the distal row of the tarsals with the base of the metatarsals. Right? And what type of joint it is? This is a plain joint. This is a plain synovial joint. This is a plain synovial joint. How many joints would be there? There are 5 joints, but you have only 4 bones over here. How is it formed? Let us see that. Right? So the first tarsometatarsal joint, we can call it as TMT, tarsometatarsal joint. The first TMT joint is actually formed between, what can you say, the base of which metatarsal? The first metatarsal with the medial most one. That is the medial cuneiform bone. So this is formed between base of the first metatarsal with the medial cuneiform bone. Right? And do you know how many joint capsules this joint has? Any ideas? There are only 3. How is it made up of? And let us see that too. So this is the first tarsometatarsal joint, which is between the metatarsal base of the first metatarsal with the medial cuneiform bone. And this is a unique joint, so it has its own joint capsule. So that's independent. It has its own joint capsule. All right? Yes. Now we move on to the second one, which is the second tarsometatarsal joint. That is the second one. you can see that the second bone is bit posterior, a bit down than the other two bones, right? So we can tell it like it is embedded in a mortise. Okay, it is embedded in a mortise formed between these two bones, that is a medial cuneiform and the lateral cuneiform. Now let us see how the joint is made up of. The joint is made up of base of the second metatarsal, with the medial cuneiform bone, intermediate cuneiform bone, as well as borders of lateral cuneiform and medial cuneiform bone. Clear? Let us see it again. So this bone is bit posteriorly located, and all other bones, that is a medial cuneiform over here and lateral cuneiform over here, is interrelated. So this will be related to your which bone over here? That is the immediate bone below that, that is an intermediate cuneiform bone. At the same time, it is also related to lateral cuneiform and intermediate cuneiform. So the second TMT joint is formed between not just the intermediate one, but also with the help of lateral and medial. And it is sitting a bit down than the other one, which makes it appear like a mortise. And what is the functional significance? So this has a restricted mobility compared to other joints. That's what we are interested for. So this has a restricted mobility compared to other joints. Remember that when we discuss about the functions, it would help you. And third one is formed between the third metatarsal and the lateral cuneiform bone. What is that? The third metatarsal and the lateral cuneiform bone. The base of the third metatarsal and the lateral cuneiform bone. This one. Base of the third metatarsal and lateral cuneiform bone. Now, what about the joint capsule of second and third? I did not tell about second. You must ask, right? Yes, the second and third is having a single joint capsule. So we have 1 plus 1, 2 joint capsules already, right? Yes. And now the fourth and fifth tarsometarsal joint is formed between the base of fourth with the cuboid bone, fifth with the cuboid bone. So both are articulating with the cuboid bone. And thus this two seems to be like an independent one and has another joint capsule which forms the third one. So we got 3 joint capsules. So let us just summarize this one. Tarsometatarsal joint is formed between distal row of the tarsal bones with the base of the metatarsals. We have 5 joints. First one is between base with the medial cuneiform. Second one is between second metatarsal and medial cuneiform or intermediate cuneiform, at the same time lateral and medial cuneiform too. Third one is between the third metatarsal and the lateral cuneiform. Fourth and fifth is between fourth metatarsal and cuboid, fifth metatarsal and cuboid, and we have 3 exclusive joint capsules. And functionally, something is relevant, that the second tarsometarsal joint has less mobility as compared to other joints. Right. Now, like every joint, this joint has to be stabilized. How that stabilization is done? Stabilization is done by dorsal ligaments. Dorsal means the ligaments in this aspect, the dorsal aspects. And then you have the plantar ligaments, and finally one important ligament, that is the deep transverse metatarsal ligament. We had something like in the wrist complex, that is a deep transverse metacarpal ligament. Where is it located? That is located near the metatarsal head, like this. That joins the head like this. But still, even though it is in the metatarsophalangeal joint, this is functionally related to this joint because they helps to keep the metatarsal heads in position. If the head is distracted or moving away from each other, definitely the base will also become less stable, or base will go for instability. So this has a very great role in the stabilization of that joint. So to summarize, the stability in the transverse metatarsal joint is provided by plantar ligaments, dorsal ligaments, and deep transverse metatarsal ligaments. That's all about this discussion on That's all about this discussion on which joint, that is the tarsometatarsal joint. And now we are going to straight away discuss the metatarsophalangeal joint. Yes, the next one is about the metatarsophalangeal joint. and we are going to discuss about that. We have MCP joint in the hand, metacarpophalangeal joint, and here you have the metatarsophalangeal joint. This is a self-explanatory. Metatarsal means these are the metatarsals, you know, and phalanx are this one, and thus this joint is the joint between metatarsal head and the proximal phalanx. Here you have that joint, here you have that joint. That is joint between metatarsal head and proximal phalanx. What is the shape of the metatarsal head? The metatarsal head are relatively concave shaped, somewhat convex shaped, whereas your proximal phalanx is concave shaped. So this is actually a joint between the metatarsal head and the proximal phalanx, where your metatarsal heads are convex shaped and are concave shaped. Before that, let us have a quick look onto the figure showing the joints in the leg and the bones. Here you can see clear-cut diagrams about the bones, especially the transverse tarsal joint. You can see red color, the metatarsal joint, which we are discussing, and the bones related to that. The metatarsophalangeal joints is upcoming, and about the interphalangeal joints and all the toes you can see in this diagram clearly. Thus, we were discussing about the metatarsophalangeal joint, and we saw that this is between metatarsal head and proximal phalanx, and this is a condyloid synovial joint. Condyloid variety of synovial joint, and this is a condyloid synovial joint. Right now, this metatarsophalangeal joint has some peculiarity. This is related to your MCP joint in your hand, but it has some few differences. What are that? One is that here you have flexion greater than extension. The exact opposite you have in your foot, that your extension at the MTP is greater than the flexion. Right now, what about the function? What is the function of this? Is that utilized for weight bearing? No, it's not. The foot, you have the metatarsophalangeal joint, exclusively saving the function of weight bearing, right? And the last difference is that first metatarsophalangeal joint, that is a big toe joint, is not having the movement known as the unique joint here. That is the opposition. It's not having the movement known as opposition. This is in same plane and axis with the other joints. That makes the discussion easier at the big toe, right? Yes, so those are the difference from MTP from the MCP joint, that is the extension greater than flexion. The unique function or main function served is the weight bearing. Metatarsal heads are exclusively weight bearing, and the first metatarsal joint is not having opposition movement as contrary to MCP joint of the thumb, right? Yes, now when we look at the first metatarsal joint over here, we have some peculiarities. Those are this first metatarsal joint. For example, if this is the first metatarsal joint you have here, yes, you find something like two sesamoid bonds, in not the dorsal aspect but the plantar aspects. That means in your first metatarsal you have two sesamoid bonds, similar to something that we have in the hand in the volar aspect. Two sesamoid bonds in the which aspect? That is in the plantar aspect, and you have them embedded in a ridge. In between them you have an intersesamoid ridge. So you have two sesamoid bonds and intersesamoid ridge. How this bone is going to sit over there? There are various ligaments that connect this bone. So there are various ligaments that connect this sesamoid bones. But are we interested in anatomy? No, we need to know the biomechanical significance of the small structures over there. Is it of any significance, or is it something like appendix? No, it is having very crucial significance. What is that? Very crucial significance. This one is going to act as an anatomical pulley. So this one is going to act as an anatomical pulley for two muscles, flexor hallucis brevis and flexor hallucis longus. No need to remember much. Just remember flexor hallucis because it's a big toe, brevis and longus. So this muscle, this bone is going to act as an anatomical pulley for these muscles. Let us see how it is. For example, your flexor hallucis brevis tendon, when it is coming like this splits into two like this and goes through the sides of your sesamoid bones. Whereas your flexor hallucis tendon is passing safely between the ligaments and between the sesamoid bones. So what is the significance? Because you know that the first metatarsal head is somewhat a quadrilateral shape and a greater amount of weight bearing is happening to them. So here you have your tendons of the muscles like the flexor hallucis longus and flexor hallucis brevis. So when it is passing like this and when it comes in contact with the surface, it can lead to greater inflammation and irritation of these tendons. Greater inflammation and irritation of the tendons. Here you have something like a plantar plates they are protecting, but here you don't have a plantar plate too. So this sesamoid bones, what does do? They deviate it such that in the plantar aspect, nothing is coming in contact with the ground. One is going beneath that, another is getting deflected to the sides. So nothing comes in contact. Both of them are below the level of the sesamoid bones. So sesamoid bones is going to act as an anatomical pulley, deflecting the action lines of the flexor hallucis brevis, at the same time giving a safe passage for flexor hallucis longus muscle. Right? That is the functional significance of sesamoid bone. Right? And here comes the first clinical condition known as sesamoiditis. Sesamoiditis. The word is self-explanatory. That is the inflammation of the sesamoid bone. But not just an inflammation. When continuous inflammation or chronic inflammation can increase the load on your sesamoid bone, it may lead to sometimes, if there is an exclusive sudden loading, it can lead to acute fracture, stress fracture of the sesamoid bone, osteonecrosis of the sesamoid bone, etc. And often this condition is characterized by inflammation of the sesamoid bone and pain in the below the first metatarsal head. Pain below the first metatarsal head. That is because you know that this sesamoid bones are the ones through which the weight transmission is done along with the metatarsal head. So they are in contact with the weight transmission forces. Of course, you have the arch and plantar fascia, but after that, it's coming in contact, not in a direct contact, but indirect contact with the ground reaction forces, right? From the ground. And thus, it leads to inflammation. This condition is known as sesamoiditis, characterized by the pain in the volar aspect of first metatarsal head. And of course, we have conservative management like pain relieving modalities, etc. can be done, or we can go for shoe modification, some period of inactivity or rest. And in some cases, if there is fracture, you just have to excise it. You just have to remove it. And it is more common in which professionals or what sort of activities it's common. People who go for prolonged running, people who go for jumping, and people, those who are in athletics, are having a chance of sesamoiditis, and more sometimes in gymnastic individuals too. So sesamoiditis is a clinical condition related to this, which is characterized by inflammation of the sesamoid bone, and sometimes this inflammation and continuous loading can lead to stress fracture of the sesamoid bone, osteonecrosis of the sesamoid bone, etc. It may need conservative management, and if it fails, it may need surgical excision. Sesamoid bone is very important because this one is functionally significant and acts as an anatomical pulley and provides safe passage for two important muscles in the victory.
Yes, here we can see the sesamoid bones and tendon of flexor hallucis brevis and longus, how it is being deflected by the sesamoid bone and how it increases the efficiency and prevents the tendinitis due to weight bearing. And this is a very clear diagram showing the tendons of flexor hallucis brevis getting diverted by the sesamoid bone and flexor hallucis longus passing through the center of that bone. And finally, this is about the what you call the sesamoid bones, how it appears in the X-ray. This helps us to have a better understanding of the foot biomechanics.
And something more interested about the Morton's foot. Let us see about that. Okay, we have, based on the length of this metatarsals, we can divide it into three classifications. We can divide the metatarsal length based on the length into three classifications. They are index plus, index plus, index plus minus. This is simple, no need to worry about this, and index minus. Right? Three conditions. Index plus is that your first metatarsal is largest, that is the same usual appearance that most of us have in our foot. First metatarsal is largest, followed by second, third, fourth, and fifth. Index plus minus means first and second is of the same length, then decreasing order. That means first and second is of the same length. And index minus is known as Morton's foot, that is your second is greater than the first. So in that individual, you can see that the second limb, second phalange is a bit more protruded than or greater in length than the which one? The first one. So what happens? This is not functionally that good because the weight transmission goes through that and it may lead on to fracture and some cases some functional alterations. Studies are going on about the Morton's foot and functional imbalances, but we don't have a conclusive evidence. But still we know that it is not functionally good and may precipitate some sort of functional imbalances and weight transmission differences than the usual ones, because this one is a strong one and this is not that strong, the second metatarsal, because this has a greater surface area of contact and quadrilateral shape. So that is a condition which is based on the length of the metatarsal, which include index plus minus, and index minus, often known as Morton's foot. Right? Yes, that makes this discussion interesting, and let's see some diagrams of this Morton's foot.
And here is the diagram of Morton's foot or index minus condition, where your second toe is larger than the first toe and then the size difference is like normal one. And of course we have conditions like index plus and index plus minus, which we have discussed. This is yet another diagram of a real life diagram of a lady with Morton's foot, that is a second toe is greater than the first one. And there is also another clinical conditions related to this metatarsophalangeal joint, that is a Lisfranc fracture, because metatarsophalangeal joint is known as Lisfranc joint, named after a surgeon who discovered this fracture and named this fracture. And this is that fracture where the metatarsals are being displaced, one or more metatarsals are displaced away from the tarsal bone. This is very common, one type of fracture, that is a Lisfranc fracture.
And now let us examine how stability is achieved at this metatarsophalangeal joint. The stability at the metatarsophalangeal joint is the function of a joint capsule. Of course, it has a very good joint capsule, and at the same time there is something known as the plantar plates. There is something known as the plantar plates. Of course, we have a ligament, transverse, deep transverse metatarsal ligament, which we already discussed, ligament, and collateral ligaments. Okay, collateral ligament. This deep transverse metatarsal ligament is the one that is attaching to the head of the metatarsal and provides stability. Joint capsules are exclusive for each of this joint and this provides stability to the joint. At the same time, it's the collateral ligaments, which you know the orientation of the collateral ligaments, and they provide some sort of stability to this joint. At the same time, this collateral ligament plus this plantar plates. What do you mean by plantar plates? Plantar plates are nothing like you have the toes over here, you have the metatarsals over here, and here you have some sort of structures which actually function as providing the plantar plates, similar to the things that we saw in the hand, that is volar plate. So you have your metatarsals over here and you have your phalanx over here. So this is attached between the phalanx to the metatarsal, and they help in sustaining the weight bearing. They help the metatarsal head in sustaining the weight bearing, because immediately below the head you have this plantar plates and volar plates in the hand. So similar to that, you have the plantar plates, and plantar plates plus this collateral ligaments provides the greatest stability to the metatarsophalangeal joint. Now we are going to see about the plantar plates, its functional significance, and a clinical condition known as plantar plate tear.
Yes, here you can see the plantar plates, which we have discussed right now. And the plantar plates, you know that it is similar to volar plates and are seen in the plantar aspects in the MTP joint, and it's very crucial in helping the stabilization and weight transmission. And it is to be noted that in the first toe you don't have a what you call the plantar plate, but instead you have your sesamoid bone and a thick plantar capsule. It is seen in second to the other toes. And finally, this is a clinical condition known as plantar plate fracture, or what tear, not fracture, the plantar plate tear, where the plantar plate get a torn due to some excessive activities or excessive wear and tear, etc. And this diagram shows one of the technique in plantar plate tear rehabilitation, which is a taping technique, which is very helpful in plantar plate rehabilitation.
And finally, to the last joint in this area, that is the interphalangeal joint. There is nothing much to discuss on the interphalangeal joint, except that in the first toe that you have only a single interphalangeal joint, whereas in other you have proximal and distal interphalangeal joint. The motion possible is flexion extension at the joint, and this has functional significance with the interphalangeal joints of the hands. Right? And what is the significance of this interphalangeal joints is that they help in weight transmission between one foot to another at the time of the gait. So they are actually helping in that transmission. When you take one foot to the next, you can see that we move from this direction to this direction. So they are helping in the transmission of that weight and the force, which we will discuss in the function more clearly. At the same time, they provide a firm base of support by getting in contact with the ground. And of course, we have seen in patients with neurological deficits, etc., they may not be able to go for the flexion of the interphalangeal joint or press the joint with the ground. So they will have a decreased stability and a loss of balance. Of course, there are other reasons for loss of balance. Along with this can be accelerated. If they are able to press their foot to the ground or interphalangeal joint to the ground, of course, they can have greater stability and better base of support. With this, we wind up the discussion about all these joints, the important joints, that is the tarsometatarsal joint and metatarsophalangeal joint. They are important. The sesamoid bone, the volar plates, the plantar plates are important in this session. And straight away in the upcoming videos, we will discuss the discussion on their function at the ankle complex, which is bit complex itself, but we'll do it in the simplest manner. If you like the video, don't forget to click the like button and kindly subscribe to my channel to stay updated with all the latest updates.